I think it's about getting to the routine of, how we were shooting previous episodes.
Yeah.
Ensure that you have your clothes for the set ready the evening before, and you're not scumbering to look for shirts in the morning.
That was me last night. I was rushing, trying to find everything.
Yeah, you're wondering.
And Sandra was reminding me, like, this is how you used to do it. You used to put the bag there with your clothes, with your shoes.
Literally, my bag would be close to the door. Like, I would be picking on the go. Yeah, I guess it's time to get back to the routine, because it makes it less easier to forget things.
Yeah.
Or to forget anything. Because once you go with a routine, you sort of use it as a checklist.
Exactly.
You check and finish.
But it's a good problem to have. I like to think about it that way. I have like words that I try to, or little phrases that I try to live by as the year has been going on. Like little things that I've heard. And it's now something that has stuck with me, and I have it down on a little sticky note. And when I go sit down to work, I look at it and it reminds me of things that are guiding me this year. So I have one that says, you're not what you say you will do. You're what you do. Or now I'm forgetting it.
No, basically,
you're what you do, not what you say you will do. Exactly.
Okay.
So even if you say you're a writer, that's great. But do you write?
Exactly.
If you say you're a professional, you're a lawyer, are you actually out there doing the practice of law? So the things that you do in your day-to-day, that's what makes you who you are.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a good one that I usually reference every time I sit down. I'm like, okay, so I say I'm going to do this, so let me actually do it. So I'm actually that person. The one that I've just added as of like yesterday was, how lucky am I? It's just something I thought to myself, just randomly, in the sense that when I have something that's really putting me down, or I'm really upset, or there's an inconvenience in my life, I think to myself, how lucky am I that this is the problem I have to deal with?
Yeah.
So even this morning, that was what I was thinking about. We're running late. I'm like, how lucky am I that the problem I have is that I'm working with one of my best friends and we're running late on the production for the podcast. Like, how lucky are we that we have a podcast?
Exactly.
That God has graced us in this way. So I just try to put things into perspective, to think, really, this is the problem that I have in life. It will be fine, right? So that's something that I'm trying to use as like a little bit of medicine anytime I have something that's not going right in my life. So let's see if it works. But yeah.
You've already given us your interesting thing of the week, and it's already profound.
No, but yeah. Anyway, how lucky are we? Welcome back.
That's a good way to look at it. It's the same thing actually for me. I think beginning towards the end of last month and beginning of this month.
Yeah,
I started to say, like every day, to look for something beautiful that has happened, irrespective of how the day has gone.
Yeah,
and I have realized it's such a mind shift. It's such a big mind shift in terms of gratitude. Yeah. Because at the end of the day, I am like, something beautiful happened today. And I think about my day and I find something that was incredibly beautiful.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter how difficult the day was, how many challenges you had to deal with, at least something beautiful happened. And I think that's another way to look at it, to sort of find occasions where you need to be very grateful, and it makes your life richer.
Yeah. That's a good attitude. So with that said, let's begin this episode with that attitude.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Full Scale Podcast. We're excited to have you back. In our previous episodes, I think the past 2 episodes, we discussed due diligence reviews, and I hope you have had an opportunity to engage with the previous episodes. We look forward to hearing from you on how you found the episodes. Today, we will be doing a discussion where we will be reviewing the startup investment activity in Africa in 2024 so far. Adrian, what are your thoughts about today's discussion and the topic?
Yeah, I'm excited. Happy to be back with another episode of the podcast. Happy to be here with Tim again. And looking forward to just getting into some of the things we've seen or that we've experienced throughout this first 6 or 7 months of the year, what we've seen in terms of investment activity, where that's been, some key geographies, trends, insights. So yeah, hopefully valuable information for our viewers and listeners. So
Yes.
yeah, looking forward to getting into it.
Indeed. And I'm sure we'll also cover a bit of comparative activity in terms of different years, all the way from 2019 to 2024, and see how basically this year compares with the previous years. So, Adrian, I would be happy if you can kick us off with the key trends and insights for, startup investments in Africa for the past, 6 or 7 months.
Sure, happy to. So the first half of the year, it's been a mixed bag. I'd say the first 6 months, so January to June, the investment activity was a bit depressed, or not as vibrant as we've seen in previous years. So as of June 2024, we had seen $780 million worth of transaction value in the startup space on the continent. So just to put that into perspective, I mean, it's a big number, but to put it into perspective, that's a 31% drop compared to the second half of 2023. And that's a 57% decline compared to the first half of 2023. So first half of 2023 was 50% higher than that. So just puts into perspective that the investment activity slowed down for quite a bit of the first half of the year. But July 2024, which is last month as of this date of recording, last month was really notable because out of the blue, we then saw a raise of $420 million, which was the highest monthly fundraising performance in over a year. So July was a really standout blockbuster month when it came to actual fundraising on the continent. Highest fundraising month in over a year, and that surpassed the total activity that we saw in the second quarter of the year. Was way surpassed by just a single month. So July was really an outlier. And because of the $420 million that came in during July, the continent has now surpassed $1 billion in investment activity. So for comparison, so $1 billion is usually like a good benchmark. So to think about in terms of the investment activity happening on the continent, at what point during the year did we get to $1 billion? So if you look at previous years, 2019 and 2020, it took all the way till November before we had seen $1 billion worth of investment activity on the continent. So by that metric, we're doing better this year than we did in 2019 and 2020. But if you look at 2021, 2022, and 2023, we raised $1 billion of investment activity happened way earlier in the year. So 2021, that was as early as May, as early as April in 2023, and then February was really 2022 was really the big one, where it was by February, the second month of the year, already $1 billion of transactions have happened. So not as much activity happening this year as we've seen in maybe 2022, 2023, but still doing better than some other years. So again, it's a bit of a mixed review. There's a better performance definitely in July, but there was not as much activity earlier in the year. Earlier in the year, it was things like the Uber Move sort of investment that we talked about in episode 9. That was one of the big deals. But other than that, the activity was not as remarkable. Yeah. So that's sort of where we're at. Record-breaking month in July, not as much investment before that, but we're ticking along, and let's see what the rest of the year has in store. Maybe you could tell us a bit more in terms of the sector focus. So we've talked about how much we've seen in investment activity. Which sectors did we see that activity in? And maybe in terms of geography, where across the continent was that investment activity happening? Maybe you could go into those, just walk us through that.
Yeah, sure. So of course, the sectors that seemed to take the lion's share of the investment within that particular period, basically tech just did what it has been doing before, which has become a front runner in attracting investments in Africa. And we had sectors specifically clean tech, e-commerce, and health tech, which are leading the investment wave and showcasing groundbreaking innovations and attracting substantial investments in Africa so far. And like I've mentioned, fintech still continues to dominate. I think it's a very attractive, sector for investors to channel their investments, and it has captured significant investment. Again, going back to the tech element of it, it seems to be attracting perhaps good investment, and maybe it's reflective of the fact that the scalability is perhaps more easier with tech.
Yeah, it goes back to things we talked about in season 1, where technology just supercharges anything you're doing, right? It supercharges the scale at which you can reach people, your product, as well as potentially the returns, and hopefully also the impact that you can make. So I guess we're seeing that play out in the investments.
And of course, at the early stage of investing in startups, and this again goes back to conversations we've had before in our previous episodes. I mean, the investors that will be putting money at the early stages would want a higher return, and that higher return is possible with perhaps rapid scaling. Or so again, it just reflects on how tech, has generally been doing quite well in Africa in the past couple of months. So we of course had, like you've mentioned, major fundraisings like Move in Nigeria and PayScale in South Africa, which were also reflective of such investments. In terms of geographic distribution, again, the traditional big four in terms of attracting investor funding for startups in Africa, being Kenya, Egypt, South Africa, and Nigeria, still were leading in terms of activity in the past half of the year, about 6 months. We can call it the past semester. I understand, of course, they are split in terms of the semesters in terms of considering investments, but yeah, once again, Kenya, Nigeria, Egypt, and South Africa were still leading in that. Maybe I could also just touch on investor confidence and the strategic moves that sort of accompanied this type of investments that we have seen. And even before perhaps we speak about that, I would also just like to bring this to context in terms of our audience. The idea is, as we providing you with this information, as we're having a discussion, I think it could be useful information, especially if you're a founder, or maybe you're developing a product. Maybe you can already start to see the bias that is perhaps going to tech, and maybe you can consider how you can automate. And these are not just Binthesia, but it seems to be a trend that is developing a lot in Africa. Maybe it's a good thing to consider for investors. So going back to investor confidence and strategic moves, the launch of funds such as Adenia Africa Fund and PadTech Africa Fund 2 seems to underscore the growing investor confidence. And these funds are specifically sort of aimed to support fintech, telecom, and healthcare sectors, which also sort of reflects back on those particular sectors, which seem to have attracted significant investments. So major acquisitions such as Bupas, QuickBus, and Lesaka acquiring Adumo also indicate strategic consolidations within the ecosystem.
Okay.
Yes, I don't know whether you have something you'd want to add on that, or you can tell us a bit more about the significant investments in the market in the past semester. You can call it that.
Yeah. So I mean, I think all the things you've highlighted go to the same theme, right? Like technology is a big thing. It helps move a lot quicker, create access to a lot more markets, scalability. Therefore, there's a lot more funding in those areas, and therefore there's more funds that are being raised to invest in those areas. And a lot of companies in those areas are the ones that are receiving the funding. So again, looking towards scalability and how far you can reach, tech-enabled investments or tech-enabled companies seem to be really leading across the country, across the continent. So talking about significant investments, I'm happy to go into some of the ones that we've seen, particularly in the last month, in July of 2024, which, as we mentioned, it was a bit of an outlier month. It was the best month in over a year in terms of investment on the continent. So the three deals that I'll just touch on, just to showcase what the deal activity was looking like on the continent. So one is D-Light, which is a Kenyan solar energy company. That's D.Light, L-I-G-H-T. So the solar energy company, they secured a $176 million securitization facility, which I thought it was worth pausing just to explain what that means. So They brought in $176 million worth of investment. But what does that mean? What is the securitization facility? So a securitization facility is basically, if you can imagine a company, so say D-Light in this case, that has assets that generate predictable future income or income streams or revenue. So for example, let's say they have a contract with 100 different customers, all of them for solar panels, and those contracts last 10 years, right? Each year, there's a certain amount that the customer needs to pay D-Light for those solar panels. So you can project out and say, over the course of 10 years, we're going to make this much money because those customers will be paying those down, assuming, of course, they pay. So you know what the revenue stream is. It's predictable. You know how much money you're going to get. But you don't want to wait 10 years to get that money because you need that money now to invest in the company and change the way you're operating things and scale and all the things that we've been talking about. So what you do is you pool those assets together, let's say those expected revenue streams from the solar panels, and you issue securities against or that are backed by those assets. So for example, a bond, right? Very simply a loan. So an investor says, I will lend you money, which is I will buy your bond, the bond that you've issued, which is a security backed by the assets we've just talked about. The income that will come in later, the revenue you'll receive from the payments from the customers, will then go towards paying those bonds. So paying the investor their loan back, as well as interest on top of that loan. So what that means is you get an immediate injection of money from the investor because they say, here's the money now. And over time, you will pay me back based on the revenue you're getting from your customers, in addition to interest, right? Because I'm not giving you this money for free. You as the company, you get the money now. Everyone's happy, right? Because you've gotten that money sooner and now you can invest it. So that's really what a securitization facility is, very basically. I mean, there's a lot more complexity that goes into it, but I think that's a general explanation of how it works. So D-Light received $176 million worth of that, right?
In short,
which is really cool.
In short, you get to eat your crop before the harvest.
Yeah, right? So the assumption is the harvest will come, right? So if you don't get
it's guaranteed. The assumption is there's a bit of guarantee
exactly.
on the harvest.
So you need to make sure that you're actually going to make that money in the long term. So there's some risk involved, of course, but it's a cool way to bring forward the amount of money that you will receive in the long run. But of course, there's a cost in terms of the interest that you're paying down. So anyway, that's D-Light. That's one deal. There's 176 million of the 400 million in plus we talked about for July. Another company was MNT Halan. That's M as in Mary, N as in Nancy, T as in Tom, then hyphen Halan, Halan. They are an Egyptian microfinance and payments company. They raised 157.5 million for expansion, 40 million of which came from IFC, actually, interestingly. So that's an Egyptian company, again, making moves and bringing in a lot more funding in order to continue expanding and to scale, hopefully go full scale, that type of thing. And the last one I'll mention, and I won't do too much on this because we'll actually do an episode on this to come. So just to preempt that, the third one I'll talk about is Nala, which is NALA. That's a Tanzanian financial services company, which closed a $40 million Series A round, which we've talked about, Series A, Series B, priced rounds, all of that in previous episodes. So check that out. And then we'll be doing a special episode on Nala, sort of deconstructing that deal, just something for people to look forward to. So those are some of the bigger deals that we've seen, particularly in the last month on the continent. I'll also maybe just talk about a few startups that maybe are worth watching or just to keep on your radar going forward. There's Nuru, which is a clean tech company based in DRC. They raised $40 million in Series B funding to build what they're calling the largest solar mini grid in the region. So, which would be really cool, could signify a major shift towards renewable energy on the continent. So let's wait and see what comes out of that. Another one is Kasha, Kasha. It's an e-commerce startup from Rwanda. They secured $21 million in Series B funding. That money is going towards expanding their digital health platform. So they're in the business of revolutionizing women's health and wellness through a digital e-commerce platform. So pretty cool. Again, innovation, using technology to scale their business and bringing in more funding to hopefully scale even faster. Last one I'll touch on is MyDawa, which is a health tech company based here in Kenya. They received $20 million to enhance their health platform. They are trying to redefine healthcare accessibility and delivery using their healthcare platform. So again, taking their idea, embedding it and supercharging it with technology to reach as many people as possible. And they just got 20 million in funding to continue doing that and expanding. So let's see what happens. So just keep those on your radar. See what happens. Maybe we'll do a deal on them or deconstruct some of those deals in the future.
Sure. Yeah.
Maybe you could touch on just some challenges and opportunities. So we've seen, the investment has been mixed over the course of the past 7 months or semester. We've talked about some of the significant investments and some startups to watch. So based on all the activity we're seeing, what are perhaps some opportunities coming up? And what are some challenges perhaps that also we might see coming up, or that people might want to avoid based on what's happened in the past?
Yeah. Indeed, first of all, given that comparatively, when you compare the 2024 so far to 2023 and 2022, the fact that we have had a bit of muted activity, well, until July came and rescued really the outlook big time. Because I think before July, the funds raised in the continent stood at about $780 million US.
Correct. And if we had done this episode then, it would have been a very bleak discussion.
Well, that's what everybody was, that's what everybody was saying, has been saying. There's been a lot of significantly muted activity in the continent between January all the way to June. compared to previous years, previous years, and of course the periods that almost come close to what we've seen so in this year are years in 2019 and around 2019 and 2020, and 2020 had COVID.
Exactly.
So it's basically sort of interesting, and actually it's exciting that you've discussed the mega deals that came through in July that really pushed the numbers up across the $1 billion US mark, which is exciting, and I'm glad we'll discuss one of them. But building into that, I'm happy to speak about the challenges and the opportunities. Like I've mentioned, of course, one of the challenges is that the investment landscape has been described as slow compared to previous years. It could be reflective of investor caution, sort of being a little cautious about making investments, or it could be perhaps reflective of maybe there's not enough exciting kind of startups in terms of strategically what direction the investor is looking at. Because of course investors tend to sort of they may have season in terms of seasons. Investors could have specific areas where they're sort of targeting to make investments, and we've already mentioned tech is attracting a lot more investment, so it could be part of the challenges. Again, one other challenge, the continent has experienced is that despite the influx of capital, and some of this is historical, I'll have to say, some startups have faced closure due to high burn rates and insufficient revenue. But you see, such issues are usually a build-up of a couple of maybe years. It cannot just be attributed to 2024 or the first half of 2024. But despite that, there's of course a lot of opportunities, whereby some of them include high resilience and adaptability of African startups, which is evident as they form local partnerships and diversify revenue streams. The other one is there is also growing support from government policies, and international organizations that is aimed at bolstering the startup ecosystem. So again, so I'll also want to add more here that July perhaps is a testament that despite how the year has looked so far, if we had, sometimes they say, lightning doesn't strike same spot twice, but it could be possible to have such 2 or 3 more months within the year, especially as people as investors seek to disburse and invest monies for perhaps this financial year. We could perhaps see a bit more activity. but again, the activity is ordinarily a build-up of, you cannot, investments, are not made in a day.
Exactly.
Perhaps I would hope that there's still some pipeline, there's still some discussions going on about investments.
Yeah, I completely agree. And just to add on that, I'd say it is historical, but also there are macroeconomic effects in play, right? So we've talked about in season 1 how many of the investors many of the people investing in the continent are not on the continent, or they're not from the continent. So we have a lot of dollars coming from Europe, US, other continents to come invest on the continent. So when things happen in those regions, so regional wars, interest rates rising in other jurisdictions mean people have better investment opportunities there. So they might decide, why invest on the continent where I don't know what I'm going to get, but I know I have an interest rate here that's a bit higher. So maybe they tend to invest in their domestic markets instead of investing on the continent. So there are many things in play, but again, even within the challenges, there are opportunities. So you mentioned consolidation in the market, Bupas acquiring a competitor in South Africa. So seeing that even when there are challenges, there may be strategic moves that startups can make to bolster their position in the market, even amidst everything that's going on. So even with the mixed bag of the first 7 months, I think there's still opportunities there. And I guess the hope is that in the next few months, we can see better months, so something closer to July. Maybe there are deals right now that are being done that we won't announce. They won't announce till October, November, and they'll vastly change the outlook of the year as a whole. So let's see what happens.
Hopefully we'll have that. So let's see what happens, and perhaps in December we can look back and see what the data looks like for the year so far.
We'll do a wrap-up episode for the year.
Yes.
Awesome. So I guess just to summarize that, really, that's pretty much the conversation, right? It's 2024 has been a bit of a mixed review. Investments were a bit slower in the first half of the year. The big one at that point was the Uber investment in Move, as well as a few other investments, all the way up until July, when things really took an upturn. $420 million plus investments in a single month, best month in over a year, took us over the $1 billion mark. We've talked about a few key investments or big deals that we've seen during that time and how they've changed the landscape. But again, the through line there, the theme is technology. Technology is the thing that's moving markets, moving industries, moving scale. So moving from all the way at the beginning of your startup all the way to Series A, Series B, the types of deals we're talking about. Technology is the big thing that we're seeing in all of these startups. So again, making sure that your startup is technology enabled, or it could use technology to move its product or its reach farther. That's another theme that we continue to see. And we've also talked about a few top startups maybe to watch. Let's see what happens with those, and some challenges and opportunities, because even in the most challenging of times, they say what it's darkest right before the dawn.
Indeed,
like that. So it's a movie quote that I'm getting wrong, but yeah.
No, it's actually a very common one. So yeah. And I think a lot of American politicians are using it in campaigns. So yeah.
Yep. So that's 2024 so far, and that's pretty much our episode in terms of the substance. I always love getting to our fun segments. So Tim, maybe you can give us something interesting for the week.
Oh yeah, something interesting. Happy to. So again, maybe when our audience gets to interact with this with this podcast specific episode, it may be a couple of weeks from now, and maybe when some of the things I'll talk about will not be as recent. But as we speak, we almost getting to the conclusion of the Olympics.
Oh yeah, true.
Yeah, the Olympics in Paris, which have been quite interesting. Honestly, there have been interesting upsets of champions and world record holders, but for me, what specifically one thing that I found interesting and sort of like a lesson point is watching the men's 100-meter final. Man, that was something for the books.
Yeah,
it was one of the closest final of 100 meters, literally like the gap between like number 1 to like number 6 was so small, any of them could have won it.
Sure.
And that perhaps is reflective of how sometimes you could be all very good stars, but it's very fine margins that will set people apart. Because literally Lies, right? One gold. It was just they shared the time, official time.
It was like a fifth of something.
Like the official time, it was exactly like on board. Really, the time looks the same, but it was very marginal. The gap. And first of all, for me, it was I think three things. One was that it was very impressive. It's just a show of how great talent pool was participating in that final.
Yeah.
The second is that you never know how close, that one small push could take you to the glory that you're looking for, to the outcome that you're looking for. That very fine margin, that one email you responded sooner than the other one, that one call you picked quicker, or just the fine margins of how you do a couple of things perhaps could change the outcome, because literally it was very fine margins.
Yeah.
And the third is that sometimes you can also be happy with the effort that you have put, even if you don't really end up, at the very front, because you did your best and it was just not perhaps your day. So you tried your best. The margins were very fine. You give it a best push. You can go and sit back and say, I was happy I did a good job. So
true.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing for me.
I think they can all be proud of what they did.
Absolutely.
Really getting that close to it. I'm sure there'll be disappointment if you don't win, but to go that far, it's amazing. It's a really cool, interesting thing of the week. Only other thing I'd add is, so Noah Lyles, I read that he's notoriously a poor starter. So when you getting off the blocks, I guess there's like the reaction time, right? Everybody starts once like the gunshot goes off. So his reaction time is not as great as the other runners. So right at the beginning of the race, he fell behind, I don't know how many places. But then over the course of that time, he was then able to catch up and eventually win. So I guess, it's not how you begin, right? It's how you finish. There's so many little lessons in very many
lessons there.
Yeah. So, congratulations to everyone who, went to the Olympics and performed, wherever they ended up. So, yeah, amazing.
Yeah. Waiting for the time Adrian will feature in the Olympics. Should try 200 meters.
You'll be waiting a long time. I don't think I'm good enough at anything to actually be at the Olympics, but let's see.
So what has been your interesting thing for the week?
I'm glad you talked about something like inspirational and all that for your interesting thing of the week, because I don't have that.
Okay.
My interesting thing of the week is...
How dark will it get?
It's not dark. It's just whimsical, I'd say.
Sure.
Dolce & Gabbana have launched a $100 perfume for dogs. So it's an alcohol-free fragrance mist for dogs, which costs about $105. So delicate notes of, I can't even pronounce some of these words, but musk and sandalwood and all of this. It's inspired by Fifi, who I think is like the dog of one of the owners at Dolce & Gabbana. But anyway, it's just, for me, just seeing this was just amazing. Just like amazing, not like I love it or anything, just I'm amazed that this is a product that exists now. And apparently you can apply it by directly spraying it on the dog's body, or you can by also avoiding the nose area. But you can spray it on the pet, or you can rub your hands together with it and then put it on the fur. So I don't really know what to make of this.
Paying you for this, No, are they paying you for this shout out? That they're getting a shout out here for.
Dude, I saw it and I was
you need to share this.
I need to talk about this. Someone needs to know that this thing exists, and let's have a conversation.
Wow. I'm confused, but
I don't know what to think of it. I don't have a dog personally, but if I did, I don't know if I would actually be getting them a perfume. I don't think they need it.
Yeah.
But I just thought it was so interesting that this in today's society, this is the product that we have, and that this is available. So hey, to each their own. If you love to, if you want to spritz your dog with a little bit of notes of musk and sandalwood and all this, this is a product that exists, and you can do that. So
it makes sense. It makes sense to the extent that dogs are pets, and we pamper them as an expression of what we feel about ourselves and what perhaps we, basically they are an extension of our ego. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I can see how somebody would spend that on their dog.
There are people who leave their estate to their animal.
dog. Exactly.
Yeah,
So I think I can see how maybe somebody sat down and they always were like, I would love my dog to smell so much better.
Right.
So I mean, it's a business opportunity. A startup can also launch in that area. I mean, it could be a trailblazer if you change the the notes on the on the various.
Just make sure you have an MVP and you try it out with,
in a good mode.
Your target market.
Yeah, maybe we could try one for cats, Adrian.
No, I'm okay. But I mean, the only other thing to note is that some animal rights organizations have, raised a red flag, or they're basically saying that dogs have a strong sense of smell. They use it for many things like communicating and interacting with their environment. So they're not as keen on the idea of, putting perfume on dogs because of, the way that dogs are made and how they typically interact. But hey, it's 2024 and now we have dog perfumes. So yeah.
That's really interesting.
If we make a time capsule, or like the time capsules that you make.
Yeah.
So they have the time capsules that they put different things, artifacts in, like music records, newspapers, historical things that talk about us as a society and
exactly.
as a species.
Time. Exactly.
And then they have the ones that they shoot into space, and they're like, in case there's alien life, they'll find this and be like, this is representative of who we are as a species. I don't know if this should make it in that capsule. Because hey, it's here now.
Well, I don't know. Maybe we'll ask our audience whether they think it should make it.
Let us know in the comments. Like, what do you guys think?
Or maybe those are the part of the reasons why the aliens haven't contacted us yet.
That might be why.
That might be one of the reasons. Wow. Okay. That's an interesting one.
For the week. That's the interesting thing of the week.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for joining us.
Truly interesting. Trust me, it is. Yeah.
Today we were just going over the first 7 months of the year and the investment activity that we've seen. Hopefully you got some value out of that. And let us know in the comments what you think. If there's more into this info of this sort of breakdown of review of the year or past deal activity that you want us to do, let us know. Like the video, like the audio, comment, subscribe, share with your friends and loved ones, or as Tim says, even your enemies. Share with them so that they know
we don't mind.
You're getting more value than they are. Yeah. And only other thing is stay tuned for our weekly challenge, which will be out on our social media all on Saturday. So on all our social media pages, check us out on Saturday. You might have a good chance to win a prize. So be on the lookout for that. But otherwise, from Tim and Adrian, thanks for joining us. And we look forward to seeing you next week. Thanks.
Thank you. Goodbye.